Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm joined by Pete Mohan. Earlier today, Marquette lost on the road to Butler, 88-80, giving up 63 points in the second half. This was a noon game on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Pete Mohan, I know you were, and I know a lot of people, a lot of Marquette fans around the country were watching secretly in their offices, and I just have this vision of people ducking behind cubicles and cursing. Was that at all what it was like for you in the second half of that game?
I wish it was that exciting. My office is only 3 people, and my boss was out of the office today.
So you could curse out loud.
I even had it on the speakers on my computer.
Nice.
That I was that unabashed about my sports watching today. But I just want to point out that I only plan on giving a real effort for the first half of this pod, in order to honor this team.
Right. Hey, it's only fitting, so we're going to try to get as much in as we can in 10 minutes before we lose Pete Mohan here. So no matter how you were watching this game, where you were watching it, giving up 63 points in the second half, unacceptable, lost us the game. The second half weaknesses, particularly on defense, has been a theme for this team throughout the season. Rewatching the tape, it's hard to pin this loss on any single one player. When you give up 63 points and lose a 18-point lead that you started the second half off with, it's no one individual's fault.
You can't say that we lost because of Marcus Howard.
Yeah.
Let's separate him into a different basket first, and then we can start talking about other guys who maybe didn't step up. But go on, what were you saying?
Yeah, so Marcus Howard, you're right, I agree. He finished with 26 points. He was 8 for 10 from the field, 2 for 8 from three-pointer, which is a little bit lower than average. But by and large, he was the one kind of down the stretch there. If we really needed a bucket, which we did for most of the second half, he would be able to thoroughly impressive driving and getting into the lane. I thought Juwan Johnson had a number of those plays too. But really, early in the second half, when we're losing that big lead that we had built up, there's just a number of characteristic mistakes we've all seen before from every single person on this team, but we don't respond to pressure well. Butler came out in the second half, played like their hair was on fire. Their ball movement was great. We were on skates on defense the whole time, and really our defensive effort wasn't there. For as much as we were there in the first half with the defensive effort, when Butler started bringing the wood, we couldn't match it, and we got scared.
One thing that I thought was key defensively in the first half is we were noticeably fronting their post players, whether it was Kravis or Martin or whoever was trying to post up in there. Hauser and Fisher all did a pretty good job of defending the paint area, and when they did try to lob over the fronting defender, I think Juwan had a steal, maybe there was a few other tip-aways and such. So I thought we just did a great job overall in the first half of preventing them from getting anything going in the paint and making them settle for jumpers.
I agree. Hauser in particular, he was great. You're right.
Yeah, he was. He really hustled to get around those guys in the post.
Yeah.
The second half was a different story. I think that while we can point out fact that we did pretty much shut down Travis. He only had 10 points, 6 of which were on free throws. The other guys did hurt us, and the way that they were able to score in the paint on us in the second half was through drives mostly, as opposed to post-ups, rather than running the offense through Travis, which they normally would do in the post. We kind of took that away, and they went to Martin and Baldwin, and they basically just got into the interior of the defense. Savage as well. Those guys, Savage ravaged us on the inside.
I mean, everyone in the second half ravaged us. And that was a great point about, Butler's style, not only their effort and their intensity on offense and defense changed in the second half, but you said it right there. They in the first half, they were trying to get Schravitz down on the post, trying to go through kind of more of their traditional offense. In the second half, They realized pretty quickly the way the fouls were going to be called. There were some quick whistles on both sides, I thought.
Yep.
Butler realized that really quickly, and they just started relentlessly driving to the hole. They have, Baldwin, Martin, Lewis, Savage, a bunch of guys who can play that role at getting to the hole.
And they were in the double bonus with 10 minutes left.
More than 10 minutes.
I mean, that's the death knell, really.
Yeah, and as soon as, they were in the, I don't remember exactly what the minute mark was when they went into the bonus or the double bonus, but I think it was, at least the bonus was around 13 minute mark. And at that point, I'm thinking, okay, this is over.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way we're going to come out of here with a win given this situation and foul trouble mounting for all those guys.
I mean, we did try to mount a little bit of a push there at the end. We don't want to make it seem like the guys gave up. They certainly didn't. They fought, but not really on the defensive end. I think that these guys look forward to playing offense a lot more than they do defense.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe save for Haney and Jawan. I think those guys usually are pretty engaged on defense. And help, too. I mean, he's always out there hustling. Not to say that any of these other guys don't give their all, but they're not as excited when they're on the defensive end of the court as they are when they're seeking out their own shots. And I don't necessarily think that it's a case of this team won't defend hard when their shots aren't falling. Their shots weren't falling in the second half, that's true, but I don't think that that's correlated necessarily to our defensive poor performance. Some teams can get down. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about being defeated mentally, I don't think, as much as just physically. They didn't have anyone to stop Butler's drives.
Yeah.
Luke didn't come up and play help defense. No one else was helping. The guys just got to the rack at will, laid it up, or got free throws, and we had no answer.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that point about help defense is exactly right. Luke was either slow or hesitant. Maybe some of it has to do with not wanting to pick up another foul and go to the bench early. But look, when you have a stat line, 0 for 1 from the field, 1 rebound, 2 points, 5 fouls, 1 assist, 1 steal, 2 blocks, you get the point. Luke had a decent bounce back game against DePaul after Villanova and against Seton Hall as well. But he needs to continue to bring that effort, and I think that's really what it is for him. We've discussed it ad nauseum here on this pod. I don't know what the effort is. I know Steve Wojciechowski, from what I can gather, pointed that out specifically in his post-game column, that there needs to be more effort there, particularly on the defensive end. Buzz Williams, he was able to get the most out of those teams because of the style of basketball he preached. He preached getting turkeys, getting 3 stops in a row. He preached defensive toughness. He preached, every possession. Mm-hmm. I see Wojo preaching a lot of those same things. It hasn't filtered down through the team yet. Thinking through this game and over the past couple of games, I think our defense has gotten better. We understand our rotations a little bit more. There's less of kind of what we saw against Wisconsin of just consistent layups. There were still a lot of them today against Butler. I think a lot of it's effort and want to, and I just don't see it there. And I think it's highly ironic that that's the case, given who Steve Wojciechowski is, who he is.
I think if B. Henry was here, he would say that our defense folded like cheap patio furniture in the second half.
Yep, downy soft.
Downy soft. We just can't rely on our shooting. You can't blame the three-point shooting. We shot 38.5%, exact same percentage as Butler. Mm-hmm. It wasn't our shooting. We shot 48% overall. 78% free throws. It's not ever going to be our shooting that loses us a game.
Yep. You can't give up 88 on the road and expect to win, no matter how good your shooting is.
Well, and here's the thing about Luke, and I mentioned guys that aren't excited about playing defense. Luke isn't excited to play offense. And it's not that he's not skilled. He has a nice little baby hook.
Yeah.
And it's not like he's not fighting for position either. I see him working down there trying to get position. It does make it hard when you have a couple 5'9" guys trying to feed the post.
Right.
That's not the same thing as having some lanky wings trying to get it into him. So that's somewhat of an issue. But still, 1 field goal against Butler, it's not even about the fact that he's not trying to score. It's just that he's not making their big men work on the defensive end, which gives them energy on offense, which leads to offensive rebounds, which leads to second chance points, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. He's not wearing anyone down on defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we need that from him.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like even Helt is making guys work harder on defense than he is, because he's at least hustling after every board, tipping it around, getting after it, getting physical. Luke, he gets out there to his position, puts his arm up like he wants the ball, doesn't get it, rotates the other side, tries it again, whatever. He doesn't care. He just has to be more assertive for the sake of the team, even if he's more of a type B personality where he really doesn't care if he gets more touches on offense. Mm-hmm. But he has to understand that he has to get those touches if this team's going to be successful.
Not to single out Luke Fisher, there were other people in this game, and yes, we need more from Luke. I think we've seen it in Pete Mohan. You were mentioning this just before we started recording, that in closer games, particularly against Seton Hall and some other games against Fresno State where we were able to either win the game or keep it closer, Luke Fisher had more of an impact on the game. He was more assertive, better on defense. Mistakes were made by everybody on this roster, whether they're turnover mistakes, bad drives, bad shots. On the defensive end, too, I thought, I want to transition to a couple of the positives and take some questions from some followers and then look forward to the schedule. So we got a few things to pack in here. But, I thought our transition defense was terrible. Butler got out and ran a lot. At one point, Butler had 4 people under the basket versus Marquette's 2. They got the rebound, and somehow, even though we had 3 people back and they only had 1 person back, they beat us down the court and got an easy fast break layup. I thought overall throughout the second half, our fast break defense was pretty poor. Pick and roll, Butler was good at passing the ball and finding the open man. On the good side of the ledger, we mentioned at the top, Marcus Howard was good. I thought Hanif Cheatham had a pretty solid game. He was good, really good defensively at points, as was
Hauser kept us in it in the first half.
As was Sam Hauser, who not only defensively but had a good afternoon from the 3-point line. Mm-hmm. So there are some positive things to take from this, but really when it comes down to it, we need to see more defensive effort, and this is going to be a tough stretch coming up to get those bounce back games from. Right before we started recording this pod, we asked for some questions from Twitter followers. We're gonna have time for just a couple of them. The first one is from @JKMU asking, how could we bear to watch that game again? Rewatching the Butler game. Weren't you nauseous after the first go-round? Personally, yes, I was nauseous. But if you don't rewatch the game film and see what actually happened, you can't talk about it, and you shouldn't talk about it or tweet about it. So, didn't want to go that route.
You could rewatch that first half over and over because it was our best half of basketball all season.
It was. It was
a complete performance, offensively, defensively, play with poise, didn't turn the ball over, defensive fundamentals. It was beautiful. And then everyone put on their dirty Huggies, walked out there with soiled pants the whole lot. I'm going to say that.
I mean, that's what it felt like. Want to get to another question, too. This comes from @GoldenEagles_MU. Wanted to know our thoughts on our man-to-man defense and how we thought that impacted the game. Pete, I know you have some thoughts on this. Just off the top of my head, I think there were a number of blow-bys, whether it was Keelan Martin, whether it was Savage. There were a number of times where it was either a blow-by or we were just on skates, on our heels, kind of backpedaling, and they blew right by us and took advantage of that. I didn't think it was terrific. There were exceptions, but not a lot of positive in that first half. I just think once Butler got their ball movement going, they loosened our defense up so much that it was easy just to get right to the hole and get a foul call.
One thing that's clearly wrong is some of our man defensive scheme, because there were situations where Butler would run the weave on top and we would switch everything and end up with a horrible matchup. One specific example that pops into my head was when Rousey got switched on to Keelan Martin with 4 fouls, and as every other Butler player did in the second half, he took him straight to the rack. Rousey couldn't do anything except put his hands up and get out of the way and let him get a layup. That was, to me, the epitome of our defense in the second half. So we need to clean up our man fundamentals, and we really need to know matchups and when we can switch and when we can't, because we're not going to win if we keep switching Andrew Rousey on to Keelan Martin type players.
Final thoughts. You continue to see the coaching staff preach defensive principles to this team. Preach the importance of defense. There's no better example than what we saw today to show those kids in the locker room in a Marquette uniform. You played defense in the first half, they scored 25 points. You didn't play defense in the second half, and they scored 63. The proof is in the pudding. Now, Butler's a great team, so give credit to them. Some of their scoring in the second half was just because, they're better than us. A lot of it wasn't, though. A lot of it was defensive lapses, lack of effort, those types of things. So these kids have seen over multiple games, if we play defense, we've got a shot. That needs to continue to work its way through our team. I think this coaching staff is preaching it, but they need to continue to preach that. And Pete Mohan, I don't know defensively if there's any other answer aside from that, aside from time and continue to grow.
You see from the Wojo recruits that they're some of the better defenders on this team. Just from watching Howard and Hauser today, the freshmen, they move their feet as well as anyone on this team. Hauser stood out in the first half for his ability to front, the forwards, which is huge for us as a power forward for him. If he's able to defend post players, that's key. And Howard, I thought he does a great job of moving his feet and defending without fouling, which is what you need, especially in this era where they're calling all these ticky-tack arm bars and stuff like that.
Oh, it's the worst.
Maybe that's the silver lining to this, is the guys that he's bringing in, he's able to mold them in his defensive style. I'm hoping that's what's happening. Like with Reinhardt, you're not teaching that old dog new tricks, okay? The dude,
right.
He's got the laziest bone of anyone on this team, and and it stands out sometimes. So watch that film of this game in the first half, and you can see, like you said, how much better this team is when they're playing the right kind of defense.
It's there for us. They just got to do it. They got to listen to their coaches, and they got to give effort.
It's 40 minutes of execution.
It's 40 minutes of execution, and what a game, what a game. So looking forward, it's easy to forget, despite this loss, we are still on track to potentially have NCAA tournament caliber season here in conference play. Mm-hmm. Ken Pomeroy still predicts us to be 9-9 at the end of the season, and even beyond that.
And I think he's been correct on every pick so far this year, if I'm not mistaken. His formula essentially picked the correct outcome.
So continuing to look forward, Creighton coming up next, Villanova at home, 2 tough games, but the games left on the schedule that we still need to win, Providence, St. John's, DePaul, there are still winnable games on this schedule. It would be nice to get a marquee win for our season. Today was one of those shots. Butler's still going to come to Milwaukee. Xavier's still going to come to Milwaukee. Villanova, who knows? They're still going to come to Milwaukee. I think they're way too above our heads, but you never know. So a lot of opportunities left for this Marquette team to get a big win. A lot of opportunities to let too many games slip through their fingers too. So defense, man. Defense wins championships. And if this team can finally have it click to just play possession by possession, and they've shown they can do that. They just haven't put it together for the full. You hear this, right? Kind of across sports, young teams need to figure out how to put it together for a full game. And this team has yet to do that. Maybe they've done it against some of the lesser competition earlier in the season, but I would argue they haven't even done that. So put together a 40-minute game. It doesn't have to be beautiful, but put together 40 minutes where you don't back down for 40 minutes. That's what I want to see from this team. I don't care if it's against anybody but DePaul. I don't care if it's against DePaul. But anybody but DePaul, that's who I want to see it from.
And if they play like that team from the first half, they're capable of beating Villanova at home.
Yeah, and hopefully Wojo has that tape of the first half on loop and just says, this is how good we could be. I mean, we killed them in the first half. Yes, they were a little bit sluggish, but we were on fire, and we were playing Marquette basketball, and it was beautiful.
Quite beautiful. Yeah, I'm scared of Creighton.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is, but before the season, looking at the schedule, there's like one game that I'm always really afraid of, and it's at Creighton, because I think they have the best home court advantage in all of the Big East. They pack that place every time, no matter who the opponent is, and not to mention they're a great team whose only loss is to Villanova. So, and they're well-rounded, I'm scared, man.
Couldn't agree more. Marquette will play at Creighton next Saturday, January 21st. Going to be a tough game for Marquette. Hopefully they can put up a fight. We'll hopefully be back later in the week with predictions and to do a quick Creighton preview, get some of the fellas on the pod. Pete Mohan, any final thoughts before we sign off here today?
Because of technical difficulties, we didn't get to display our previous pod, but I do want to address the fact that we did beat Seton Hall and DePaul, I think, since our last pod. So we took care of business in those games, and that's sort of been, I think, the overarching theme about this team is that we're capable, more than capable, of beating the teams we're better than. We're certainly more than capable of losing to the teams that are way better than us, and the teams that are close to us, a la Seton Hall, they're a toss-up. Going forward, if we're supposed to read that trend, I would expect losses against Creighton and Villanova. But with the string of winnable games following that, who knows, maybe we could put a win streak together there.
All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here for this episode recapping the loss to Butler in Indianapolis. We'll be back soon to talk more about Creighton Villanova and the upcoming Big East schedule for Marquette. Thanks so much for listening to the Real Chili Podcast. We'll talk to you next time.